19 Iowa State players. That's right. 19 of them have now transferred over to Penn State. When is enough enough?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. It is a Locked On crossover to talk all things transfer portal here with Penn State and Iowa State. My name is Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. And I'm joined by my co-host today, Nick Marovets, host of Locked On Cyclones, gives you the daily perspective on all things Iowa State. Today's show is brought to you by Rougiet. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time to head to Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiet ready, feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section as we are going to talk about the outlook here for both sides, for Iowa State and for Penn State. Get a reality check because there are some Penn State fans that are optimistic, some Penn State people that cover the team like myself that see the vision, see the blueprint, but when is enough? And also Iowa State losing its entire roster, 40 plus players going into the portal. This is unprecedented here. And a majority of them have ended up at Penn State. Even more are expected to follow, a few more. So when is enough? Nick, I want to get your perspective as far as how big, because with you telling me what the impact here is for Iowa State, it also gives me an idea of, okay, what is Iowa State losing? It means also what Penn State is gaining here. So the whole roster's turned over. So I imagine this is huge for you guys.
Yeah, I think it was some number like 51 that I was looking at earlier today. The number is ridiculous. And granted, on the Iowa State side, that includes guys like Abu Sama going to Wisconsin or Trey Bell going to Michigan State, right? So not every single transfer is going to Penn State. So, but focusing mostly on those guys, this is a huge loss. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. And I remember once the news broke on December 5th, my immediate thought was like, well, how much of this roster can we retain? And I thought about like the pillars. Which of the pillars can Iowa State keep potentially?
Who do you want back? Who do you want back?
Almost every one of those pillars is on to Penn State now. So like as far as the value, it's almost all out in Happy Valley, unfortunately.
And that's, of course, you would like a veteran starting quarterback in Rocco Becht. Okay, so those are the obvious ones, but I want to go and discuss some of the players that are less than obvious, right? Okay, because to a casual Penn State fan, to a casual Iowa State fan, they might look at this list and say, well, it's just a bunch of names to me. I know who Rocco Becht is. I know who Carson Hansen is, Benjamin Bramer. Those are the obvious ones, but I think about the players like Chase Sowell, and then Gabe Burkle, who also comes over with Benjamin Bramer at that tight end spot, or a player like Marcus Neal, who could potentially be the face of Penn State's secondary for this upcoming season. And then you see some of the other players that enter the transfer portal. I'll give you one, for example, that didn't have a rating initially, but then he got one, and now he's rated as the number 3 overall linebacker, according to 24/7. And that is Caleb Bacon. Yeah. So the 1,000-foot view, people say, well, these are just names. They don't actually improve Penn State. But then you look at the rankings, you look at Penn State being at the top of the transfer portal list, being at the top of the standings. Which is it here? Because I'm on the side that Penn State is improved because you combine the best of Penn State with the best of Iowa State.
That's the best way to look at it. And we talked about this a little bit. I've seen the same stuff online. Like, how is Penn State going to compete with basically the roster of a Big 12 team that didn't finish that well? Well, this is not these 19 players that I'm looking at here. And if the list changes between now and when this goes live,
which
of course, it probably will. So, it's a little different, but this is not the entire Iowa State roster. It's the best of the best that's coming over for the most part. There are a few names in here that are some younger prospects, but that's how I'm looking at this. Is Penn State is getting better because they are getting some of the top talent like Marcus Neal. Penn State fans, get ready to learn this. This is his celebration. You will see it all the time because he is so good. Yeah, the shark is so cool. I mean, I love it. That's like his little emoji and his captions and everything. And that's just one of the guys. The guys like Chase Sowell, I thought didn't really get to be unlocked last season for Iowa State. And it's kind of come out that he was dealing with some injuries. And obviously Matt Campbell believed in him at Iowa State, and he was a top tier wide receiver threat for Iowa State outside of Brett Eskelson, who, if you know Brett, you know he's a legit dog, but if you don't know who he is, he was also a very good wide receiver. So you're improving your wide receiver room. The argument that Iowa State's talent isn't on par with the Big Ten is a challenging argument for me, because I think that the way you have to look at, well, NIL in general just has flattened the bell curve, in my opinion. So like the Big 12 is generally more competitive than it was 5-10 years ago, but also it's the depth that's really the difference. The top of all of the teams, at least in most schools, are very similar. And if you're getting the cream of the crop from a school and just that, you're going to get better as a result of it.
Who are the underrated names from this list? I mean, I could make a case ultimately just because I see the vision, so to speak. Zay Robinson and Karan Brookins, for example, at wide receiver. Those are guys that still need to be developed. They're high upside, right? You want to just get them in the building and continue to get them to train with Noah Polley, or just even the coaches at this point. Now that the dust has truly settled, we've seen the Iowa State, at least the core of it, right? You will see some other, like Jeremiah Cooper is somebody that, okay, Penn State's starting to lose. So they have some late subtractions here as we're still early in the portal, but I guess late in terms of this 1 month overhaul between guys being retained and guys entering their name in early into the portal. It seems late, even though we're in 3-4 days into the actual transfer portal itself. But from Iowa State's perspective, again, guys that, okay, Rocco Becht's an obvious one. Again, Carson Hansen, maybe even include someone like Chase Sowell in there, Caleb Bacon and Marcus Neal because of the way they're rated in the transfer portal rankings. Give me guys that you thought Iowa State was going to be able to retain that would have been starters or eventually evolved into star caliber players if they had stayed with Jimmie Rogers.
Yeah, no, that's actually super valid. And it's tough for me, I will say, just because looking at this list, all of these guys look familiar to me, of course, it's like Iowa State fans. So trying to see this through the Penn State vision, you've got your pillars, like you mentioned, Becht, Bramer, Burkle, Sowell, Bacon. You got to know Bacon. You got to know Marcus Neal. I would say Brett Eskelson.
Alex Mansky?
Well, let me get there. And Mansky's my first answer, but like some of these guys like Eskelson will break the top off of a defense. That was kind of his thing for Iowa State. If you didn't watch a lot of games last year, when he wasn't getting like 6 reception, quick hitch routes or outs or whatever, he was the deep threat for Iowa State. So those are the kind of things that I would look at when looking at this list. But a guy like Alex Mansky, that's exactly where I was going to go as a younger player that has a lot of potential to develop. And I was kind of looking at it when Rocco Becht announced that he was going to leave. Like Mansky could be the guy that could step in and really take on, because remember, Rocco stepped in a little earlier. Obviously, I guess Penn State maybe doesn't know this, but we weren't exactly expecting Rocco to step into the starting role when he did either. So I was hoping Mansky could do that. Will Tompkins is a dog. Jamison Patton was the name that I was going to bring up as well. I thought we had a relatively decent chance at Patton. Very good, defensive back, but maybe not quite on the same level as some of the other guys in the secondary for Iowa State because we were pretty talented there. Just did not end up retaining him. Caleb Brazina, I think isn't probably talked about in the highest. Same thing with Cooper Ebel here. Not really in the Caleb Bacon tier of linebacker, but absolutely has the potential to be there. And I think it just really comes down to like scheme. And then sometimes for linebackers, it's just opportunity and what comes your way. I'm just looking through this list. I think that's probably my big, you obviously mentioned Brookins and Robinson. I think 2 good wide receivers. And when we're sticking just on players, I won't talk about coaches as much, but you brought it up. Noah Polley, like that is a phenomenal hire for Penn State. And you saw what he did with Higgins and Knoll. Like it doesn't even matter if it's Brookins and Robinson or if it's, a 2027 Penn State recruit. Having Noah Polley on the roster is already going to unlock a ton of stuff. So the argument that the coaches are the same, well, look at what Iowa State was just 2 years ago in the Big 12 championship game and basically just too injured to compete again, which that's a whole different conversation. But that's the way I'm looking at this list right now.
So that's a great segue into digging deeper into this conversation. This is just the surface level stuff. Hey, we see all the transfers. We see the additions to Penn State and the departures for Iowa State. But what's the reality of it? Is Iowa State going to be able to recover? Is Penn State just going to be a middling Big Ten team because, well, last year this was a middling Iowa State team, right? No, that's not the case. We're going to explain why Iowa State can be better, but also how Penn State can continue to improve. That is coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. You can get to use the profit boost on bets that you already feel good about. You can go with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. You can take a shot on an underdog if you feel like an upset's coming. Or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think are going to decide the game. Then apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com. Again, FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. And again, thank you for making Locked On Nittany Lions and Locked On Cyclones your first listen and watch every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already, go check out the all-new Everydayer Club. What do you get with the Everydayer Club? Well, you get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Nittany Lions, Locked On Cyclones, and so much more, all compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcasting app. You'll also get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of these shows and so much more across the Locked On Podcast Network. Check out the links down in the show notes to learn more. That's the Everydayer Club. Nick, let's pick back up more so with Iowa State's perspective and then get back to Penn State. I mean, are the alarms going off? Again, 50-plus players. I mean, that was the last time I saw it. It was 40-plus players. So it's even extended beyond that. Most of them, right, a bulk percentage have gone over to Penn State. I mean, I've been impressed from afar because now, since we have like a mutual connection, Penn State takes a former Iowa State coach for the second time. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for anything that's relative to the Cyclones now, whether that's men's and women's basketball. I've seen them in the headlines a ton. Those are good teams. But then football, I see the transfer portal pickups, and it's not like Jimmie Rogers is off to a bad start, but I feel like he's encountering the same issues that, and this is kind of important with context to Matt Campbell, Rogers is also experiencing the same holdups, the same obstacles that Matt Campbell did in Ames, Iowa.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Honestly, the way that Campbell, built his teams, I think it is different than the way that Rogers is doing it. And so that there is some, it's just a different style to me. And I think it's refreshing to a lot of people. Looking at I believe the count as of right now is 23 commits to Iowa State. And I think it was 13 on the offensive side of the ball. And it was either 6 or 7 of those guys are linemen. Very clear that Jimmie Rogers is building this team, at least very much so on the offensive line. But I think in general, he's focusing on the trenches. We've picked up Jalen Raynor at Arkansas State, who is very much a dual threat quarterback. Honestly, tore Iowa State up this season when they actually played down in Jonesboro. And then if you use him as a running quarterback behind a really solid offensive line, you have effectively 11 players on the field. Everybody talks about that. When your quarterback's just handing it off, it's like 10 on 11. When your quarterback's part of the equation, when he's a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, to make NFL references, you are playing 11 on 11. And I do think that the future for Iowa State is legit. Earlier this week, I was looking through, like, they're bringing in some legitimate players. Jimmie Rogers is just an X-line from UTPB. What an acronym there. University of Texas Permian Basin. Really, really good Division II player. But I was starting to ask the questions like, are we going a little too small here? Like, I get it. This is a very challenging time, but maybe this isn't the route we need to go. And I answered that earlier this week on Locked On Cyclones. But then just the other day, a couple days ago now, Iowa State's brought in Oklahoma offensive lineman Jake Taylor and Auburn lineman DeAndre Carter. So, like, we are starting to bring in some Power 4 level talent as well. I think Iowa State's going to be fine, but it is going to be just a totally different picture than what we are used to because everyone's gone.
Well, you make an interesting point there, an interesting description that Rogers is doing things differently than Matt Campbell. When you're dealt the same cards, when you're dealt the same hand, how so is that the case? Just kind of give some perspective, because I think it sheds a light on what Penn State should expect from Matt Campbell.
I think, well, there's something to be said about playing through the offensive line and defensive line, and Jimmie Rogers understands, having spent time at South Dakota State, kind of what's in the Midwest, right? He's done recruiting here already. Honestly, South Dakota State, not that far from Iowa State. I know people who are actually playing at South Dakota State right now, and their families where I'm from make that trip all the time. So understanding kind of using offensive linemen and what's really close to Iowa State as a pillar of your program is something that Jimmie Rogers just simply quite honestly has to do. Like, he does not really have an option right now. As the program develops and evolves, maybe he can change. But I think that I've honestly kind of felt, this is maybe just me, but Matt Campbell likes to focus a little bit more on the skill position players. I feel like, especially on the defensive side of the ball, like the secondary was always really, really solid, but the defensive line, like, we heard this blew my mind. I could not believe it. I think it was John Haycock that said this. He was like, we're not really that concerned about getting sacks. That is like, and he's retired now, so obviously Penn State's not dealing with that. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I'm pretty sure, if I'm correct, sacks have a bigger impact on EPA than a turnover does. So I feel like we should probably be focused on that. And I think that's really solid, kind of route for Iowa State to go down and focus on, really bringing in disruptive defensive linemen. I highlighted a few yesterday that I'd like to see, and really winning in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball. I feel like Matt Campbell generally hasn't done that as much. That doesn't mean he can't from now on, but that's just not really how I perceive it.
Again, I like the moves so far to this point from Matt Campbell. And again, it's about who you retained at Penn State. Okay. If this was just a copy and paste of the Iowa State roster, I don't think I'd be having the same conversations or be in the same mood, because yes, this was a team that finished 8-4, but there were more issues than just, okay, it's the star players. Well, guys were hurt, and that trickled down to a question of the depth. But when you combine the best that Penn State has to offer, the best that Iowa State has to offer, and you merge those depth charts together, okay, guys don't have to play as many snaps. You are able to take on a longer season. You are also just able to cycle in different players, okay, and create competition, create organic competition, and just have better players around each other. So I think from a chemistry standpoint, we're not going to know until it's actually finalized just how well the guys that are sticking around for the most part are going to fit in culturally with Matt Campbell, or else they wouldn't be there, right? They wouldn't stay behind at Penn State, would have said, I'm going to follow James Franklin. I'm going to go get a restart somewhere else. Okay. Matt Campbell would be able to kind of weed all of that out, so to speak, if there was a concern there that, oh, this guy's not going to fit in culturally. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. So the reality check, so to speak, for Penn State, I don't think it's as bad for Iowa State. I also think the naysayers of Penn State are completely wrong here. My questions still are about the long-term outlook, because I see a lot of veterans for this Penn State team. My concerns aren't about 2026, which we'll talk about more in the upcoming segment. They're long-term, because Rocco Becht, 1 more year of eligibility. Benjamin Bramer, 1 more year of eligibility. Gabe Burkle, as far as I'm concerned, 1 more year of eligibility. A lot of guys on the defense, 1 more. Okay, Marcus Neal has 2 more years of eligibility. That's great, but he's kind of the exception, not the standard here. It seems like most of these Cyclone players that are brought over, there's no middle area. You have Marcus Neal, who is the exception of, he's a high-quality player with multiple years of eligibility, or they're in these 2 other categories where they have tons of eligibility, but they're completely unproven. You don't know what they're going to give you next season or the year after, or the guys that are one and done. So my concern is that, okay, what does the next 2 to 3 years look like? Not year 1 versus year 5.
Right. Yeah. And that's a totally valid concern. I would say that, because, the questions around James Franklin of like, what kind of coach is he versus, Matt Campbell, I would say Matt Campbell is a really solid recruiter. I guess I don't know if I would say he's as good as James Franklin was. That's more of a question.
Franklin's a good recruiter. I would never question that about him as a program leader. I'm eager to see Campbell with the resources and the platform of Penn State, though.
Oh, definitely. I actually am as well, just because I think the difference in resources, I don't think anybody is arguing that. And I would say that from Iowa State's perspective, aside from maybe, was that 2020 with like, this is how I want to put it. Iowa State has had some unbelievable talent come through over the last 10 years. This is how I want to answer the question. Over the last 6 years, 5 years, I mean, where has Iowa State's numbers in the NFL gone? Up dramatically. I mean, you can name them on, you can't use both hands anymore. Before it was like a one-hand thing, then maybe two hands, and now it's like Breece Hall, Allen Lazard, Purdy, obviously out at the 49ers, Higgins and Knoll, Will McDonald. Like, they just roll off the tongue. And has it always translated to wins for Iowa State? No, not really, other than a few exceptions. And maybe that's more of the concern for Penn State. But I would say, actually, now having, that thought cross my mind, I'm not too worried about the talent that Matt Campbell will be bringing in over the next few years, especially when you now have, and I hate to say this, but I have been to both venues. You have Beaver Stadium in your back pocket. You have the wideout. Iowa State's wideout, very close second, I will say, very much in that conversation. But I'll never forget 110,000 loud. Like, it is a different environment, and he has a different recruiting pitch now and resources to offer. So I honestly, just from an Iowa State fan, I would have no worries, no concerns about what he can do over the next 5, 6, 7, however long he stays there, years.
Coaching, in addition to recruiting, coaching and development matters at this level. I just want to remind everybody. But the outlook, we started to tease about it. 2026, how competitive can Iowa State be? Is Penn State going to be 6-6? Again, a middling Big Ten team, or is there a possible entrance into the college football playoff? I think it's more likely than people are going to give Penn State credit for going into next season. We'll talk about it next here on this Locked On Crossover. This episode is brought to you by Rougiet. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, from money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rougiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. The science behind Rougiet Ready stands out. Those 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. You connect with a board-certified doctor online, and everything ships discreetly to your door. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege, and you'll get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. It is not crazy to think that Penn State can be a contender, not a strong one, right? Somebody kind of the path is supposed to be Indiana. Curt Cignetti goes and brings the best players over from James Madison, couples whatever, what else he's going to get with Indiana, and look how it turned over in a year's time. Penn State's schedule is super easy. I don't know if you've seen it, Nick, but they don't play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. Their toughest opponents are Michigan, which is going through a coaching change of its own. USC, which should be at the top of the Big Ten. That's going to be Penn State's toughest match, home or away. And I will always give credit to Washington. That's a tough trip on the road. But Penn State, given that they are going to have a ton of veterans, whether they're Penn State or Iowa State connected, they're going to continue to add players from the portal that aren't connected with either university. This team is in win now mode. Again, my concern is, okay, what about year 2? What about year 3? Because I don't know what the transfer portal is going to take away, but also give back to Penn State, because that's truly an unknown. We don't know what's going to happen after 26, after 27. Different conversation. So 2026 should be pretty good to the Nittany Lions. I'm expecting a floor of 8-4 with a ceiling of 10-2. You lose to USC, you drop again, Washington, the trip is going to be tough. So somewhere in that neighborhood of 8-4 is a success in my opinion, because it shows that, hey, okay, you're competitive. 9-3, probably that middle ground, but 10-2, okay, you lose to USC, you lose one of those away games to Michigan or Washington. That gets you into the playoff. More than likely, it's not a guarantee, but in the Big Ten, that should get you into the playoff.
Yeah, that's, I think, honestly, just not exactly what you were asking, but I think that's part of the reason that Matt Campbell and a lot of these players went over, is if Iowa State is, 10-2 or 11-1, even look at what BYU did, no guarantee you're getting in versus what Penn State has to do. Is just quite simply, unfortunately, different. The bar is different. I agree. I think 2026 could be a very, very good year for the Nittany Lions. And obviously you mentioned that trip out to Washington. I always forget. I feel like all I think about is the West Coast teams that have to travel, but I forget you East Coast teams have to travel
They got
as
to
well.
do it too.
Yeah. Like traditionally speaking too, East Coast teams, at least at the pro level, struggle more than the West Coast teams just because of body clocks and all of that. So that will be a struggle in just that one single game. But I think across the season, I expect Penn State to very much be in the conversation at the very least for, an at-large bid. But if not that, I would say they definitely could compete for a Big Ten title. They'll obviously have some juggernauts. The Big Ten is crazy right now. But no, I think Matt Campbell's absolutely in that conversation. Taylor Mauser coming over, and he's developed year over year. When he was at Iowa State, I thought he got better significantly, actually, just in year 1 to year 2. So I would be excited about what he has in store. I think if you're Penn State, you are thrilled for 2026, and then you're cautiously optimistic for 2027 and 28. Then I would say, this is a little bit of a hot take, but maybe 28, 29, little bit of a dip. Okay, we can't go up every single year. It's not.
You just don't know, right? And that's reasonable. That's reasonable. You say it's a hot take. I think that's fairly reasonable. Yeah. Transfer portal is going to be so radical eventually, and we're going to see coaches change, right? I imagine with being at Penn State, eventually some of those assistants are going to find themselves with promotions of their own. They kind of hide away at Iowa State. Again, Noah Pauley has shown quickly just the track record.
Very good point, actually.
You have that at Penn State eventually. Does he explore, and he's a young coach, so does he explore any associate head coach or an offensive coordinator, or a stop in the NFL, right? Just something like that. And that's where Matt Campbell's biggest test is going to be, is being able to constantly change, being able to adapt with the times of all the coaches that are eventually going to turn over, because now Penn State's in the spotlight. Okay, well, it's one thing to do it at Iowa State. You had some good production there. You developed some players into the NFL, but now you're doing it at the Big Ten level on a consistent basis. That's NFL teams are going to come calling, and it's going to be tough to turn those people away. It really will be. So as far as Iowa State goes, I don't know Iowa State's schedule off the top of my head, so forgive me, but 2026, Nick, how's it shaping up, and how would you say the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years could look for? Because Jimmie Rogers, again, did win a title at South Dakota State. This was undefeated. A phenomenal hire. Yeah, he was undefeated. That is something. Okay, I understand the critics that say that, hey, Matt Campbell never won a conference title. I do get it. There is proof there that Jimmie Rogers can. My question is, how long will Jimmie Rogers stick around at Iowa State if he has instant success? So what's your 1 to 5 year outlook?
It's such a good question, actually. And Iowa State's in such a different position than Penn State because of what Jamie Pollard has talked about as far as finances goes. And so I'm in a bit of a catch-22 here, unfortunately. Jimmie Rogers has to succeed right now, or else Iowa State becomes UNI, which nobody wants to do that, of course. I mean, shout out to my Panthers fans out there. There's not very many of you. But then if he succeeds right away, you're exactly right. He goes from was undefeated, whatever it was. I think it was 13-0 with a South Dakota State national champion, conference champion. You turn a bowl game or a Washington State team into a bowl game team, and then you take Iowa State to a Big 12 title, hypothetically, let's say, whatever it is. You can't tell me there aren't going to be thousands of people calling him to try to get him to coach their team. Like, that is automatically a problem. And when Matt Campbell left Iowa State, one of the first thoughts that popped in my mind was, how does Iowa State not become a stepping stone school now? Because if Matt Campbell won't stick around, who was basically he really understood what Iowa State was about. He understood what Cyclone fans were about, what the community was like. And if he can't stick around, what's keeping Jimmie Rogers here? I mean, he's got family around here, I guess. Maybe that's a negative outlook, but it's just a realistic one, and the one that in the kind of landscape we're in right now. So, my realistic expectation for the next year is I think that Iowa State can probably get at least 6 wins. I think 6 wins is very doable. I think maybe you could push for 7 or 8 if the ball bounces your way. You find yourself in some favorable positions. And then over the next 3 years, I expect them to be in the conversation for a Big 12 title, even if it's only like week 8, week 9. Maybe they fall off at the end, have a tough schedule break, whatever it is. And then eventually I expect Iowa State to basically get to a point where Jimmie Rogers will leave. He will be good enough that he will move on, which is not ideal. But I just think that Iowa State is in a position to make those moves. Now, if it all falls apart this next season, then that whole prediction just goes completely by the wayside, and they'll struggle to, be a bowl game, a bowl team for the next 5 years, which is what Iowa State fans are kind of used to before Campbell. So it's really, in my opinion, all hinging on this year.
And that is where we will finish up this Locked On crossover. Again, I think we could have another conversation in due time here, Nick, whether about wrestling. We have discussed we will have wrestling conversations, but even another follow-up transfer portal conversation once the portal's actually closed. Nobody can just verbally commit anymore. We're seeing that on the Penn State side where they say, hey, we're going to stay. And then they ultimately leave. So, Nick, it's always great to catch up with you. Great to talk with you and connect with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network. He is Nick Marovets, host of Locked On Cyclones, your daily source for all things Iowa State. My name is Zach Seyko, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions for all things Penn State. Subscribe to our YouTube channels and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest around Penn State and Iowa State. Nick, again, thanks so much for the time, and we'll be talking very soon.
Oh, I have no doubt. Let's do it.